and we'll do Snow White.
Snow White, which is the first cell animated feature film.
American film,
I
feature
mean,
film.
it is a lot of first things. Like, to its credit, it's not the first animated feature film like it usually gets credit for, but there is a lot of things that it does deserve some credit for.
And again, we were talking about this jacket, about this exhibit that we went to about the 100 Disney last year had whole rooms describing some of the technical innovations that Disney was doing during this time, some of which I had no idea about that are really cool, like the multi-plane camera thing. And they like had a whole like presentation and like descriptor and the actual thing like there.
Oh, cool.
Very cool to kind of see, and then like the actual thing, and then like the sort of video of the process of how they did it and how it looked compared to how it would have looked if it was all just like the previous technique being plain. And it was very cool. I mean, it kind of like, I feel like at least I hadn't been quite as cognizant of the sort of technical experimentation that was going on in Disney during all this. I feel like a lot of the reputation that they have now is a little bit different, I feel like.
Yeah. Chris, did we talk about the multi-plane camera on our Prince Ahmed episode?
I think we did talk about it a little bit with Prince Ahmed. It was I believe it was invented by Lottie Reiniger. And then Disney was kind of inspired by it and kind of tweaked it for his own cell purposes.
I'm curious how much of it was like, did he know about the Lottie Reiniger one?
I believe so. Yes.
Okay, because that's something that I feel like I could conceivably believe was just invented twice in different parts of the world, kind of in parallel, without necessarily one influencing the other. But.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like a super like like it's clearly like something that wasn't done before that, but it's not like animation as a thing was around for that long. So it seems like the kind of thing that like somebody might stumble across it.
Like any good invention, it seems obvious once it exists. Like,
right.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, for sure. And it's the kind of thing like that now it's one of those things that like clearly led to people being able to conceive of things that make it sort of obsolete later. Like we have no use for it now because like with digital animation and everything, like it just that kind of like multi-plane and depth of field and everything kind of happens.
We still got layers.
Exactly. Yeah, layers are kind of a derivation of the multi-plane camera.
Yeah, exactly. Like I mean, there wasn't. I mean, it was all the perspective that existed with like and stuff, but in order to actually like be able to create actual layers, in animation, like that was a way to do it. And it's like I didn't even realize that was there. Like I like looking back, like watching the movie again, like having seen like the exhibit and learned about the technology, I was like, oh wow, that actually is way more. Like there was way more depth than I even perceived before I knew that it was that, But,
yeah. And I think they do some interesting stuff with a multi-plane camera in this movie too. They do some like very kind of sweeping camera shots. Also some shots that I don't know if this is related to the multi-plane camera really, but they do some shots that it's like there's no way a camera could move this way in real life. And so they're really like taking advantage of it being a cartoon where they can like take the camera like on one person and like sweep it up kind of sideways up to the top of a castle and then in the window of the castle.
Honestly, if like I watch things like that, and maybe this is something testament to like the way in which Disney is kind of giving credit, because it seems really like a Disney movie anytime I see that now in an animated movie, because I feel like especially in some of these early ones they did that sort of thing a lot, probably because they were like, oh look what cool thing we can do because of this technology. But like that whole thing of like starting like with a landscape and then like going in and being like look at all the pretty sights and then going into a window and then it like the like Cinderella, I think if I'm recalling correctly, has like a bunch of stuff like that too. I've like quite a bit later, but
it is interesting how much of I think the sort of like Disney's like cultural image is really kind of set in this movie. Like fairy tales, castles, a little bit of spookiness.
Disney princess. I mean, that whole
right, but then like it's like the princess stuff, but then also kind of like magic and sort of like the like fairy tale reality of it. All of the Disney shorts that we'd seen up till this are like talking animals? What if Mickey Mouse was in a band? Like,
For sure.
but then keeping the sort of like Snow White is a musical because there's like so much of animation is driven by music.
For sure.
At least the Disney ones at this
Silly
point.
symphonies.
Yeah.
But this one isn't silly. It's like it's
This one's a dark symphony.
I mean, the existing fairy tale, which I know like a lot of the early, I mean, even the much later Disney stuff was inspired by fairy tales, because the idea of creating this like modern day fairy tale was very present, I think, in Disney's mind. And if I'm recalling correctly, like he very specifically knew that he wanted this story to be the first feature. Like
there were a couple that he was working on. Like he was thinking about Pinocchio for the first one, and he also, I think the very original plan was for Alice in Wonderland to be the first movie, but
Makes
then
sense.
someone else made an Alice in Wonderland movie around the same time that he was trying to do it,
oh,
and so
okay,
he pivoted to Snow White.
right. Because there was also a little bit of that whole like Avatar effect, where he was like there were certain ones that he didn't think that they quite had the technology for right away, so they and then got to later.
Yeah, Disney actually wanted to make Avatar in 1937, but
Well, it took him.
Once
tech's
again,
not there
James
yet.
Cameron is beat to the punch. uh,
I just can say, that story about like, oh, they made
Right,
one.
yeah.
Oh, we have to wait 10 years to develop technology before we can do the next one. Like remnants of that, or
Yeah.
in reading the story about these early.
it's technology and also skill, you know? Like this is
Yeah.
a movie that took years to make, and it is kind of made in a different way than the other Disney stuff that we've seen. It and there's, you know, there's a certain amount of like finesse that they can do with their full feature budget and scale,
For sure.
that like artistry as far as animation quality goes, that I think like that was part of his thinking was, can we do Pinocchio yet? Maybe not, you know, like let's
Right.
like we need to push ourselves more and more with each one, but we can't go too far yet.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Should we talk about what this movie is?
I mean,
it's like
people know Snow White, right? Like,
I
it's
mean kind
pretty...
of, but you know, watching this I was, you know, it's the kind of thing where it's like, oh, I've probably seen this when I was 4, you know, but I don't
Yeah.
really have any
I had
clear memories of this
I
movie.
I
I
actually
had that experience too.
I had definitely not seen this all the way through ever. I don't think, because
Mhm.
this was not in like, I don't think this was ever one of our VHS Disney animated films. Like, it wasn't in the rotation when I was a kid.
Mhm.
The
Yeah.
way that like Cinderella and Pinocchio and like a lot of the other
For sure.
early-ish Disney
I had
films
that
were.
experience with this and with Bambi, both of which I watched recently, where I was like, I'm sure I've seen this. And then I'm watching it being like, there's huge chunks of this. I mean, parts of it that I feel like I might have encountered, but huge chunks of this that I was like,
Yeah.
feel like I've never seen this before. This is like not, but bringing up memories.
Well, right off the bat, you can't say this movie's 100% animated because it opens with a live action shot of a book.
Yeah.
Oh,
Really
that actual book was at the exhibit too. They actually
Oh
had,
shit.
yeah. Actually, I think
How big is the book? Was it like a normal book size, or was it like a giant oversized book?
I guess like I should preface that and saying, now that I'm thinking about it, it wasn't specifically the Snow White one. I think it was the Sleeping Beauty one.
Oh,
But I
okay.
think they had like similar books for all of them.
Yeah.
And yeah, no, it's huge. It's like
Yeah, I'm sure.
like a thing. I mean, not like
Yeah.
comic huge, but it's like one of those like big books that you see, like you know those big Bibles that you see like in those old churches that are like,
Yeah.
like, it was one of those. And yeah, they had it. It's a real physical thing. So
I just think it's funny that this is like, it's such a kind of like animation landmark movie, and the like first image is a live action shot of a book.
Yeah.
I guess I mean the concept is kind of cool. It's like, oh, like this is the book, and then we're going into the story,
Yeah,
and then
no,
story, like, the imagination world, you know.
I'm not critical of it as a storytelling device. I think it's actually very cool. I just think it's sort of it's funny in context.
Yeah, for sure. There's some irony there for sure.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think that maybe the live action part of it, in a way, is tying into this whole thing of, like, they are trying to be serious and legitimate with this movie, right? Like
Yeah, yeah.
this is not a silly cartoon.
I mean, it
there
is,
is
but yeah,
at times,
they're
right?
trying to make it this like big prestigious
Yeah.
sort of like broad epic.
Yeah, like they want to be doing real storytelling here. And
Yeah.
so they're like, look, it came from a book.
I was surprised at how long this movie is. Like, I think animation tends to be, especially early animation, tends to be very short, even as a feature, because of the how labor intensive it is. And
Yeah.
even up until like pretty recently, I think even now, like a lot of Disney animated movies are like also for like children's attention span, they tend to be
Right.
like 90 minutes or lower.
For sure. Like
And
I
this
feel
movie
like
is like 95, something like
This
that.
is 83 minutes. I just looked at the
Oh,
back
okay.
of the
oh
Blu-ray.
yeah, yeah, less than 90. I feel like when I see a live action movie, I'm like, it's gonna be around 2 hours, like the
Yeah.
average. When I see an animated movie, especially like older animated movies, it tends
80
Yeah.
to
minutes. Yeah.
it
Right.
should be
I'm
about
like older animated. I'm like, this is gonna be like 73 minutes,
70.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I will say, if we're starting to talk about how we feel about this movie, it wastes a lot of time. I think that there's a
Does
lot
it?
of parts of this movie that really drag. A lot of scenes that go on a long time.
Yeah.
but like I mean, again, I'm right now I'm comparing this with Bambi a lot because that was another one that I watched
Mm.
as far as like recently. Talk about a movie that wastes a lot of time. Like I feel like there was a little bit of like they were reveling in the novelty, which like now because we're so saturated in animated stuff, like we
Yeah.
can't sit with those eyes. Like back then, I'm sure there was a lot of people who were like, "This is amazing! And look how colorful it is, and it's so pretty, and all these." Like, I don't think it's a coincidence as far as like how important this movie was that it like the same year that we're talking about this, we're talking about the first like commercially successful Technicolor movie,
Hmm.
which I read was Star Was Born. Actually, like there was other ones, but that was the first one that was like got considered a box office success. So
Yeah.
like the idea of like seeing color when you go to the movies was a new concept. So
Yeah.
imagine like besides just color, like all these like beautiful works of art, which is like
Yeah.
the
Well,
paintings
it's
and stuff.
interesting. It's like, color was a thing, right? But this is actually like coming on the heels of a point where there was an earlier version of Technicolor that only had red and green, not red, green, and blue. And the color kind of slightly evoked real life color, but there was something that always looked a little off about it. And people were kind of getting sick of color movies at this time, or at least like a few years earlier. They had kind of like people thought that the kind of color movie trend was ending,
It's a
and
fad.
then yeah,
It's like 3D.
but they had not yet kind of found this naturalistic three color Technicolor, and it was a bit of a gamble about like getting involved with Technicolor at this time because the company I believe was like kind of struggling because people didn't want color movies anymore. But like this and I mean I think this movie is a better showcase of three strip Technicolor than A Star Is Born.
Oh yeah, I mean we'll get to it when we talk about Star Is Born. But when I read about that first before I watched it, and then I started watching, I was like, what difference does it make that this movie's in color as opposed to being in black and white? Like I always think of like Wizard of Oz, which I know it's like years from now, but it's like in terms of like my in my head when I was like Technicolor and when movie started being in color, I'm like
Hmm.
Wizard of Oz was like this landmark thing where everybody was like, okay, now we like Technicolor. This is like 3 years after this. And then, like it makes sense with Wizard of Oz, like why that movie needed to be in color. This one, I'm like, if it was in black and white, it wouldn't have made any difference to me. I feel like I can't think of a single shot that
Yeah.
like,
Right.
you know what I mean?
It seems like they're well. We should talk about it later.
Snow White is definitely showing off color as a concept and as a like thing for movies to have much more so.
Sure.
Yeah.
And to bring it back to why we went on this tangent, like I feel like that explains why there's a lot more lingering in some of the scenes. It might have just been to like
Yeah, for
revel in the
sure.
visual
Yeah.
opulence of it.
And I
in
think
the animation and in the color, sure.
Yeah.
yeah. I think both of us, Chris, have seen a lot of that in like kind of the early sound era tends to be very kind of like indulgent and slow and like, hey, we have songs now. Like, here's 25 like musical numbers
Oh
that
yeah, I
go
mean,
nowhere.
yeah,
And like, sometimes it's great. Like Gold Diggers of 1933 has like incredible shit in it. And then sometimes it's Broadway melody and it's not very good. And I think animation seems particularly kind of on that track of like, look at what we can do.
right.
Disney animation in particular, I think.
Yeah, it's going for this kind of like impressiveness angle.
Yeah.
Right.
I think Fleischer Brothers is still kind of in the like, we just want to tell jokes.
But I mean, like, if we could talk about the animation for a second, like, there is something that is uh strange about this movie, like compared to previous Disney shorts and even compared to later Disney movies, in that the animation is very naturalistic. Like, at least outside of the context of the dwarfs, it is like the human characters are often rotoscoped.
I think they're almost entirely rotoscoped. Like,
Yeah, and it's weird. It doesn't look Disney, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
I was gonna say this one looks definitely different from even the movies that came soon after. Like
Yeah.
the things like Pinocchio and Cinderella look more like Renaissance Disney movies compared to this, which looks like for
well,
sure.
it's funny because the rotoscoping gives it a very naturalistic, because it is just people. They're just tracing over live action frames. But it also, it's so like, our eyes are so unused to seeing rotoscoped animation that it looks bizarre.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's hard to make rotoscope look good in the way that like cartoons look good. It's hard to make, I guess I'll say it's hard to make rotoscope look appealing. And
Again, how much of that appeal?
I do think it looks good.
Yeah, I was going to say
in a broad sense.
How much of the idea of it being not appealing is just because it's not what we're used to, especially in a Disney movie. Like, it being separate from the norm makes it seem odd, but it's only odd because it's not, like, you know what I mean? Like, if they just kept doing it that way, would we have just feel like, oh, that's normal?
Rotoscoping does not emphasize the unique strengths of animation. Animation is able to, squash and stretch reality, to emphasize things, to be cartoony. And when you're rotoscoping, it's a technique that you can use sometimes and people use well, especially when they kind of embellish it, which they do in this movie. But like, when a cartoon is doing realistic human motion, it just like doesn't look as good as stuff that is made specifically to look good in animation.
Yeah, it's like the difference to make a modern example, something like Monster House, which was done with motion capture.
Yes.
But is a CG cartoony cartoon movie versus like more contemporary Disney animation, which is still hand animated in a general sense. And yeah, I think like motion capture in a cartoon does look more naturalistic, but there's still that kind of weird uncanny valley-ish divide between like, oh, the movement's really natural, but like the rest of the world is so heightened that it kind of, there's a disconnect there.
Yeah, sure. I don't think that there is anything. I don't think there's anything bad with the way that Snow White moves. I don't love the way that the prince looks. But I think that maybe the issue is that it doesn't feel always like she and the dwarfs are living in the same reality.
For sure.
And as Disney's style kind of evolves over their next few movies, where everybody, all the human characters end up being a little more cartoony, it all feels more cohesive visually.
I can buy that for sure.
Yeah, I mean, this movie is pretty gorgeous to look at. It is also like Disney has preserved this movie very well, so it's like there is like it is very, very good quality in terms of like watching it now compared to like A Star Is Born, which is like not as well preserved. Just as a thing to like put on the background, maybe we should add this to our like just put on the background playlist.
Can't put this on YouTube.
It's not silent. But from a purely visual standpoint, I think this movie holds up very well. Like, it still looks very good.
Yeah. I think that says something as far as like that they were able to do something that we can look at now, like the 37, as far as like animation is concerned, because there's been so much advancement in techniques and stuff since
But
then.
like a good painting is a good painting, you know. It's
Yes,
like
that's it. Yeah.
it's
I mean,
and
a lot of
it's
the beauty of this movie is literally paintings, like the
right,
background
yeah,
paintings and stuff.
exactly.
Yeah.
For sure.
But I think like the design of all the characters is still like you were saying about
Yeah.
appeal and animation. Like there's you know, all the dwarfs have like unique character designs. You can tell them apart, partially because of color.
Yeah.
Not just because it's personality traits that are literally named after.
Yeah, all of the forest animals and all of like the spooky stuff, the vultures who love drama. Like, yeah, this is just it's a very good looking picture.
I love the forest animals. I think the way that like there's so much scampering forest animals in this movie that are animated so well. They look so good.
Yeah. And that's all hand animated, so it's
yeah.
All of the forest animals nodding is like I need 1,000 gifs of that. Which I'm sure exist. I don't know, do we want to talk about the plot of this movie? There's not a lot of plot in this movie, so we can probably go through it pretty quick.
Evil Queen doesn't like that asks a mirror who's the fairest, Snow White, it turns out. And
Which
she's
also, like, why does she care what this mirror's opinion is? Because, like, who's to say who's the fairest? I say. Like, just because it's that mirror's opinion.
Mirror of objectivity.
I do wonder, like, you know, they mention her snow white skin, and by fairest, do they mean whitest? Yeah. Like, is that what the implication is?
Who is the palest woman in all the land?
I mean,
that doesn't quite roll off the tongue as well.
Probably not what they meant at the time, but looking back, there's clearly...
It might be actually what they meant at the time is the thing.
Yeah. I mean, old European fairy tales, not known for their diversity, I guess.
For sure.
And the witch doesn't like that, so she tries to kill Snow White. The queen, the witch.
Yeah.
In a very scary sequence.
By getting Chris Hemsworth to stab her to death.
Proto Chris Hemsworth. And then she escapes and hangs out with... comes into a house with... that is unoccupied and dusty and dirty. Because it's... it's a bachelor pad of seven boys.
Just guys being dudes.
And she's like, I'll clean up. Whistle while you work, everybody. And then the queen comes back and tries to, makes her fall asleep, and then the prince kisses her and she wakes up. The end.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a bunch of stuff with the dwarfs, which is fun in animation because they're the most cartoony people. But they are the moments where they're like, taking 10 minutes to wash their hands. Where it's like, all right, wrap it up, move forward.
Right, because it's like, look at we animated all the reflections on the water. Look at it.
There are a lot of like points where it's really spotlighting the reflection stuff. I don't know what they're doing with that. It looks really strange and interesting.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of like lingering shots of reflections in the water.
Because they look cool, and because I genuinely don't know how they did that optically. Like, if it's like a weird mirror thing, if it's like an extra layer that they add on top. That
a shiny piece of paper.
Who's to say?
There was all kinds of stuff that they were showing in the exhibit about, like, because it wasn't, I mean, obviously I think that's the most famous one, the multiplane, but there was all kinds of different things they were experimenting with. Could have been in so many different ways that they could have done an individual shot.
I do like the characterization that the seven dwarfs are all men, and so they're all stinky and dirty and don't even know how to bathe.
The ultimate boys.
Like, the bachelor paddiness of it was something that I found very amusing. Of just like, we all got our beds up in the attic, and we go to work down at the mine.
It's a podcast of men, everybody.
Yeah.
Is that the collective noun?
It is, yes.
Do we talk about Hi Ho now? Because I have a gripe about that song.
I mean, I have thoughts about the music in general, but we can start with Hi Ho.
Yeah.
So in this
gripe
movie,
away.
Hi Ho, right? maybe the most famous song from this film, very famous song in general, about going to work. It's off to work we go. They sing it when they're leaving work.
Well, no,
They're
they say
going home.
They say home from work we go, and then when they come back later, they say off to work we go. But like the most iconic part of it is when they're saying that they're going home for sure.
Right. I was like, all right, here we go. Here's the song about going
then
to work. And then they're leaving work.
That was jarring to me too.
You know, honestly, when I was a kid, I realized I didn't actually like make out what those words were. So it's like hi ho, where we go.
Yeah. Like all songs when you're a kid. It's like, I don't know, they say a bunch of stuff. I don't know what they're saying.
I mean,
like Crocodile Hunter when you're a kid.
And honestly, like, one of the things that I really like about movies at this time in general, not just in singing, but even in the speaking, is how clear all the diction is. Like you can really, compared to like, you know, a rant that I could say about movies today where like things everybody's whispering and you can't understand a word anybody's saying unless you like
mumblecore.
Yeah, mumblecore, exactly.
Do you have something to say about the music though?
Well, not even necessarily about the music as music, about the way that the voice is, because I'm sure you've noticed that like Snow White has a very particular sound to her. And
does she?
Well, the thing about it is that it's interesting, right? Because I could talk all day about like the progression of like singing aesthetic over the course of the 20th century and how like recording technology progression had a huge influence on what people's ears expected and were wanting to hear in singing, and how a lot of that came from like the shift from like everybody needing to be able to sing acoustically and project in order to like be able to be viable at all in any space, to like microphones allowing like a greater range of things, but that also kind of taking away this certain aesthetic of like tonal ideal that had to go with the projection, like that's associated with and everything. Anyway, not to go too much into that tangent, but a lot of the early voices in movies, including this one, were from that sort of like older, more like classical type of tradition. The funny thing about that is that within that, like Snow White is a very like particular, like exaggerated form of this like very high tweedy sounding thing, right? But it's supposed to be evoking the same thing, and what she's supposed to be evoking is the kind of singer that Janet MacDonald is in the Maytime, which is still like a classical sound, but this very kind of like higher, showy kind of thing that is like associated with this kind of like girlish innocence. For whatever, I don't even know too much about the singer who voiced Snow White, except that it's like such an exaggerated form of it that it's almost like cartoony as a voice, even to somebody like me who like is used to that, to like what it's going for, which is interesting because like it creates this effect of being kind of like of like being a cartoony voice within the singing,
Yeah.
like, but not in a cartoony voice like a cartoon voice the way it would be like now, but like a cartoony voice within a particular kind of like frame of reference.
Like an exaggerated, heightened version of a classical opera singer.
Right, exactly. In a particular direction, which is like, it's funny because it's in the opposite direction of like what our stereotype of an opera singer is now. Because now people like associate it because of like all the sort of high, bright, Broadway-ish belty type sounds. Like people's ideas of an opera singer is like, oh, but that sort of like high tweedy sort of thing is not another version of that.
Now that's the Snow White voice.
It kind of is. Honestly, like I can't think of any other place where I've heard that kind of exaggeration in that direction than in her voice in this movie.
Yeah.
And so it's a very kind of like interesting historical artifact of a certain kind of effect that they were going for with, I mean, unless that was just the way that she sounded, but even in just casting her, like that was like a deliberate thing. Because, the idea of like something in that direction that was less exaggerated would have been way more common back then, even than now.
Yeah. Adriana Caselotti is the actor who played Snow White.
Okay. Yeah. The one time that they actually got an actual opera singer was for Sleeping Beauty with Mary Costa. And so like that is like just not an exaggeration, just the sound, because she just sounded like herself. So like and then there was times with like Cinderella where she was actually more of like a, I don't know, like jazz singer is the right way of putting it, but that sort of like softer, like it's not a classical full sound. but it was kind of a more like natural sounding, to put it that term. But it definitely sounds way more like classic sounding than the kind of more poppy influenced belty type of sounds that became more the norm as time went by. And actually, even way past when that was normal, they were still kind of like referring back to that sort of aesthetic because it sounded like classic Disney. Like now that sort of like
Yeah.
completely opera sounding, but still a little bit tinges of that, like became what was still part of the aesthetic of sounding like a Disney princess sound into the 90s.
Yeah. Yeah,
Um,
it is crazy how like how much this movie kind of like set a precedent for
right.
like the Disney sound, the Disney look, like the tone of it.
Yeah.
Although I was surprised at kind of how dark it gets in certain places. Like it's not
Yeah. It feels less squeaky clean than some Disney movies, honestly,
A
because
lot of
like
these
yeah.
early ones had darkness to them. I
yeah.
mean, like it's not like that they just gave that up right away after this, you know, like
Because this movie
Yeah.
isn't necessarily for kids, right? Like they're trying to be serious and tell a serious story for general audiences,
Mhm.
but like it's not like sanitized children's entertainment
yeah,
necessarily.
which is what the term Disneyfied now tends to connote.
Mm.
The connotation of that term is to be
But
like
hey, now Disney has Deadpool, so they can do whatever the hell they want.
true.
I just want to talk about the scene where the queen makes the evil potion to turn her into an old lady and a poison apple, because there's a bunch of great just like dark fantasy kind of details in there. She has a bunch of books that are like one of them is just disguises, and then there's like witchcraft, curses, potions. But I like how disguises gets its own book.
Yeah.
And then just like yeah, all of the details of like she's putting mummy dust in the potion. I'm like, where do you even get mummy dust? First of all, in
Mummy Dust was a bit of a popular like health tonic, I think in the
in the
19th century.
1920s.
Or yeah,
We
like
gotta grind up some of these mummies that we stole.
I was
I
thinking about
was
like that moment when I was watching Wonka recently, when he just like has all this random little vials of stuff got, like all over the world. So he like somehow went and like got like bottled up like Thundercloud or whatever, and I'm like, how did you get that?
Willy Wonka would for sure have mummy dust lying around. It wraps up a lot of the story where Snow White eats the poison apple, goes to the sleep of death and needs to get kissed to be revived, and they cover a lot of that in text because it seems like it's the end of the movie. We got to wrap this up. We don't have a lot of budget for more animation. Just put some text on there.
I was definitely
a
surprised at
classic
how
answer.
long the movie went before it like got to the point. And not like in the sense of like lingering, but in the sense of like a bunch of the plot happens, then there's like no plot, and then they have to kind of wrap up the whole thing in like the last what, like 20 minutes or whatever it is.
7 minutes.
A ton, so much plot, like 80% of the plot, not 80%, that's an exaggeration, but like a lot of it gets like left to the end. It's like, oh, we have to
Yeah.
finish this.
Well, it's like the dwarves building a Lenin style glass coffin. I don't think that there was a song for that, and so they're like, we don't need to show that. Looking at it from a modern perspective, I can definitely see the kind of the clunkiness of some of the storytelling, how long some of the scenes are, and there's not. It's mostly just there to like something to look at, right? Or there's a
Mhm.
song or whatever. But I do think it holds up pretty well just in terms of like a piece of entertainment. It's pretty light, but it has I think some of the dark spooky scenes kind of break that up nicely. I don't know. I think this is a cool movie. I'm glad that we watched it.